We taxed the rich, asking those with the most to contribute a little bit more to support those with the least. Governor Hochul and I, however, share a belief that government works best when we work together on behalf of the people we serve. Together, we are laying the groundwork for long-term stability and fiscal health.
America, on Wednesday, May 28th, the New York State legislature passed the Pied-à-Terre tax. Every channel in New York ran it the same way. Mamdani and Hochul finally taxed the ultra-wealthy global elites who park their money in Manhattan penthouses that they barely use. That was the story that was sold. That was the story that the algorithm rewarded. For the first 2 fiscal years, the tax hits any non-primary resident with a New York City assessed market value over $1 million. Not $5 million, $1 million. A real estate broker explained on air that the $1 million assessed value corresponds directly with the actual market value of $8 to $11 million. And the $6.7 million 2-bedroom condo in Midtown qualifies for that. A working doctor's second home in the city qualifies for that. That is not the profile on the press release. Now the number, you guys, that you need to hear. Ken Griffin, Citadel CEO, owner of the most expensive penthouse home sale in American history, just had his property tax bill more than double, from $858,000 to $1.87 million. Starting in 2028, it goes to nearly $4 million. 11 weeks before Hochul signed this into law, she stood on a stage in New York and described what is happening to the very people this tax now targets. The document exists. It is on tape. It is from a Politico summit with reporters in the room, and the word she chose tells you exactly what she thought what was happening before she signed the thing that just made it keep on happening. What is up, guys? Tyson DeLaCruz here. Thank you so much for rocking with me. I'm about to break down exactly how the governor of New York personally went on record begging for the wealthy to come back to the state, and then signed a bill 11 weeks later that gave them a fresh reason to stay gone. Okay, I pulled the Politico transcripts, the document budget, and the Wall Street Journal email myself. But real quick, smash the like button and subscribe to the channel, because YouTube has been actively burying this kind of conversation. And every like that you drop is fighting back and fighting for me against the dreaded YouTube algorithm that doesn't want you seeing what I'm about to show you. And the numbers don't lie, but the algorithm does. So help me beat it. And my friends, as a thank you for holding it down, if Hochul keeps signing things, the smartest second home that you can buy right now is probably in Nevada. We're talking about no state income tax. That is a whole financial strategy in one sentence. You're welcome. All right, let's get into it. Plain English on the mechanism first. Pied-à-Terre tax is a place you own but you don't live in as your primary home. Cuomo floated a version of this tax in 2019. It died in the legislature. Zohran, Mamdani, and Kathy Hochul revived it, and then this time it passed. Here's the threshold question that matters more than any fact in this particular story. Listen to the number of the original proposed use and why they had to change it back before the tax could actually work.
Originally, when they floated it, it was over $5 million. Yes. They were going to use the assessed market value by the New York City Department of Finance. Right. That's vastly different from what the actual market value is. So when they did $5 million, they realized that I think there were 3 properties in the city that had an assessed value above $5 million. Mm-hmm. So they scrapped that. Now it's going to be for the first 2 years until July of 28. It's on properties that have an assessed market value of over $1 million.
Of over $1 million. Okay. But typically, just so we're clear, properties that are, quote unquote, assessed at $1 million are, in truth, valued at what?
8 to 10 or 11. So we pulled 1.
So we're way over the 5.
The original threshold here would have applied to 3 properties in the entire 5 boroughs. 3. You can't raise $500 million a year from just 3 properties. You got to change the target. The version that passed catches assessed value over $1 million, which in New York City's assessed market terms means actual property values in $8 to $11 million range. A 2-bedroom townhome, commuter condo type situation, a lawyer's place near an office where he works late at night. The press release said ultra wealthy global elites. The statute says 1 million.
What's getting press is everyone saying, oh, we need to tax the wealthy, the people that are fleeing to Florida. But you're picking up all of those people. So a lot of my best clients are people that were never New York City residents. They live in California, they may live abroad, they live in Texas, but they have a place here. And it may be something they use for 4 or 6 weeks a year. It may be something they use for, 4 months.
Already paying property tax, already paying New York mansion tax, already paying transfer taxes every time that they buy or sell an asset, spend money in the city when they visit. They generate revenue that the budget actually depends on. The new tax is an annual fee on top of that existing structure. And for someone who uses a property 4 to 6 weeks out of a year, the math actually moves fast here. $40,000 in annual revenue charges on $1 million asset property. Divide that into 6 weeks of actual use time is $1,000 a night in additional carrying costs, taxes, and all this other stuff. Hotels in that $1,000 range actually exist. The question those owners are now asking themselves, and some of them already asking their brokers, is whether the asset math actually still works. Now, the document, my friends, this is where the story changes from a tax argument into a documented contradiction. March 11th, 2026, 11 weeks before May 26th, Governor Kathy Hochul appeared at a political New York agenda, Albany Summit. This is what it was called. Reporters were present. This was all on video. The transcript is published, and she said the following about the exact population this tax actually targets.
And we're here to say that the era of Trump and Zeldin and Molinaro, just jump on a bus and head down to Florida where you belong, okay? Get out of town. Get out of town. Because you don't represent our values. You are not New Yorkers.
But maybe the first step should be go down to Palm Beach and see who you can bring back home, because our tax base has been eroded.
There's something in this video worth expanding. Hochul used that same word in 2022 to tell Republicans to go back to Palm Beach. By March 2026, she was saying maybe she should go to Palm Beach herself. 3 years of election results, one quarterly tax report later, and the slogan turned into an actual request. Now watch how the political math behind her decision gets explained by somebody who covers Albany for a living.
She found a compromise with Mamdani where she would tax a sliver of New York's wealthy, but they're the wealthy that don't live here. They probably don't vote here. And so she gets around taxing a broad swath of millionaires, which is what Mamdani wanted to do, but she still gets to say, I'm taxing the rich. And, these are not, most of the voters, they don't live here. It doesn't have the same impact.
What does it mean, though, when it comes to the impact potentially on the luxury market? Because, you think about a lot of those second homes, they're being used as pied-à-terres, for example.
Right. And that's where she's focused on, is the pied-à-terres. She says this won't have much of an impact, but the real estate market, and agents think otherwise. They say that the luxury market really depends on these pied-à-terre transactions.
The people who cannot punish her at the ballot box are the same people whose contribution she told a Politico summit that she was depending on to fund her state social programs. That is a contradiction in 2 sentences here. The political target and the economic target are the same population here. You can't go to Palm Beach and try to recruit them back and then design a tax specifically for people who do not vote here, knowing the Venn diagram overlaps completely, unless your March speech and your May signature are not connected by any coherent policy logic, just by 2 different audiences. 3 weeks before the tax passed, Citadel Chief Operating Officer Gerald Beeson sent an internal email. That email found its way to the Wall Street Journal, and the word Beeson used to describe what Mamdani did, filming the tax announcement while standing in front of Griffin's $238 million penthouse, was absolutely shameful. Shameful. Aggressive policy, not political theater. Absolutely shameful. Watch how the Forbes reporter who covers billionaire wealth described what came out of the Citadel weeks after that email.
To the point about Ken Griffin, Citadel, his firm, is developing a massive office redevelopment in New York City, which could cost around $6 billion. They've made comments about the potential for, pulling back on that project somewhat, and they've, simultaneously also talked about expanding their office projects in Miami instead.
$6 billion in one Park Avenue construction project, 6,000 construction jobs, and 15,000 permanent jobs that were on the drawing board for New York City. Citadel said they may reconsider that project in the same communication cycle that produced that shameful email. Griffin then confirmed that on camera, on record. And this is what he said: "We will add far more jobs in Miami over the next decade as an immediate and direct consequence of the mayor's poor decisions." Not might, will. The verb tense obviously matters in that quote here. He had already been building in Miami since 2022. This tax simply accelerated a decision that was already in motion. Mamdani stood in front of that building deliberately. He knew who owned it. He pointed it out. And the COO of that company was planning to build $6 billion worth of new offices and jobs in New York City. And he called what Mamdani did absolutely shameful in writing 3 weeks before the vote. The vote passed. The word is still in the headline, you guys. The tax here is not a different philosophy. It is the version of Mamdani's revenue need that could survive the political process. The middle class version was what they wanted and what everybody wanted to hear. The tax is what they could sell to the actual people, and could sell required describing the threshold as $5 million when the statute says $1 million. Both facts, you guys, are in a public document.
We partnered with Governor Hochul, Majority Leader Stewart-Cousins, and Speaker Carl Hastie to secure New York City's first ever Pied-à-Terre tax. Together, we are laying the groundwork for long-term stability and fiscal health.
And here's the numbers that nobody put next to the vote. Ken Griffin and Citadel paid approximately $2.3 billion in New York City and state taxes over the prior 5 years. His personal charitable contributions to New York institutions, Robin Hood Foundations, Memorial Sloan Kettering, hospitals for special surgeries, Success Academics, totaled approximately around $650 million, not annually. Total. Apollo Global Management separately paid $1.8 billion in income taxes in 2025 alone. Those three numbers there, you guys, $2.3 billion, $650 million, and $1.28 billion represents what two entities contribute to New York's economic fabric and economy as a whole, while politicians now taxing them are in office. And they are not static. They are decisions made annually, and the decisions on whether to keep making them is now running alongside a different calculation here, whether a New York City second home is still worth actually holding. Watch what the city comptroller said about the exact category of taxpayers months before the vote, and specifically the word he used about risk of losing them.
I think we have to be very, very careful that we don't undermine our own tax base.
Well, you know, if you look at Wall Street right now, because of the war in Iran, Wall Street has been taking a huge hit.
We have to be careful. The budget that the mayor's proposed requires that Wall Street in New York City and the financial industry here continue to boom. And I hope it does, and it might. But if that doesn't happen, Marcia, then our budget plan falls apart.
The chief numbers officer of the entire city saying out loud, if Wall Street financial sectors do not continue to perform, the fiscal projection absolutely collapses. And in the same budget cycle, the city passed a new annual surcharge specifically targeting the class of people who continued presence in New York, is what the comptroller said the plan actually depends on. So he's saying the people are leaving, but this is who we depend on. The warning and the vote landed in that same window. Both are on record. The comptroller said to be very, very careful. The governor and the mayor were obviously not careful at all.
Now, we are facing, as you brought up, a generational fiscal crisis. We are facing right now a $5.4 billion fiscal deficit. We are encouraged by the nature of conversations that we're having with Albany. We've already seen that yield a new revenue proposal of a pied-à-terre tax that would tax the wealthiest of the wealthy across this city. And as I think you can see, everyone who's clapping here doesn't own a second home worth more than $5 million while they reside somewhere else outside of the city.
The current version of this law hits the $1 million assessed value threshold for fiscal years 2026 and 2027. In July 2028, the methodology switches to true market value, actually compared to the sales price of the property. That happens when Griffin's $238 million penthouse, currently assessed at the city value at $15.4 $2.5 million, roughly 6 cents on every dollar of that actual value, gets reassessed at something closer to value. His bill in 2028 and 2029 was projected at nearly $4 million annually. Every 8 net worth second homeowner in New York is looking at the July 2028 date right now and running some private and particular math. Not a political decision, obviously a financial one.
Roughly between 10 and 11,000 properties in the city that will qualify for this. The bulk of the revenue is going to come from about 300. So you're not talking about that many homes, right? You're talking about very expensive homes, very wealthy individuals.
So I heard from an interesting broker who competes with you, who said something very interesting to me, at least, which is that a lot of the pied-à-terres that are over 5 million are just from physically are not meant for necessarily families always. They're not 5 and 6, they're not like massive 5 and 6 bedroom apartments. Sometimes they're literally 2 and 3 bedroom apartments. Not to say that that's small, but the idea that somehow this family that otherwise was going to live in this big apartment, that they're not really built for that, because a pied-à-terre is a different conceit.
30% of tax revenue projection comes from approximately 300 properties. Think about that math. If 10% of those 300 owners decide to establish Florida residency before July 2028, sell the New York property, or shift to extended hotel stays, 30 owners, the revenue shortfall would not be a rounding error. It is a budget line that was already committed against. And those 30 decisions are private. They're not public. They're not obviously going to speak out about it. They're not in a press release. They would happen in a conversation with their financial advisor or their real estate attorneys about their quarterly revenue versus the cost of actually having it.
I am proposing a common sense surcharge on high-value second homes in New York City.
She called it a surcharge, but Mayor Mamdani called it a tax.
This is a tax on properties worth more than $5 million that are owned by people who do not reside in New York City.
Both leaders supporting the new Pied-à-Terre tax, impacting 13,000 homes in New York City valued at $5 million and above, apartments that are not owner-occupied.
But Hochul made the tax rate argument herself. She stood at a separate event and said Wall Street businesses are moving to Texas, not because of the governor. She knows that for sure, but because of the tax rate. She acknowledged the mechanism, she identified the cause, and she co-signed a new annual tax in that same budget cycle. She is completely oblivious that the tax rate drive location decisions. Her March 11 statement proves she was acutely aware of everything. She made the decision anyways. That is obviously not Hochul confusion here. That is a calculation that the political benefit of signing outweigh the economic risks of the answer that she already knew.
Hochul's Republican opponent in this year's governor's race said the new tax will backfire.
They're going to take their money someplace else. And that means some carpenter's not going to get a job. Some plumber's not going to get a job. The restaurants in the neighborhood are going to lose business.
Hochul says the extra revenue is needed to help the city close a $5 billion budget gap.
America, here's the calculation nobody is making about November 2026 governor's race. Hochul is on the ballot. Her March 11th political quote, go down to Palm Beach and see who we can bring back home because our tax base has been eroded, is now in every Republican opposition research file in New York. That quote and her May 28th signature are now permanently attached to one another in the same news cycle. She made the argument that the tax base was eroding before the vote. She signed the tax that continues the erosion after it. The challenger who runs against her does not need to invent that argument. Hochul already made it on tape. They only need to show the receipts in the right order. And here's the second thing nobody has calculated. Hochul's own fiscal year of 2027 budget, published the same week, she co-signed this tax, contains this exact line, not raise income or statewide business taxes. She published that statement as evidence of economic caution. She signed the tax in the same document. She was protecting the broader tax base from income tax exposure while simultaneously creating a new annual charge on the specific segment of high net worth property owners she had publicly identified as the people New York needs to recruit back from Florida. Those two positions share a page number. That is a document contradiction. not a political spin problem. Political performance versus private calculation. The performance was go to Palm Beach, bring them home. Be a responsible governor who knows what the tax base needs. The calculation was sign what Mamdani needed to close the deficit and let the methodology argument sort itself out later on. Both documents carry her name. Both are in the archives. March, she begged him to come home. In May, she gave him a fresh reason to stay gone. Same governor, 11 weeks. When the fiscal year 2027 first quarter revenue data from New York City Office of Management and Budget comes out, and that number tells us whether that 500 million tax projection is actually holding against the cascade that Noble Black described. I'm posting the breakdown as soon as it drops. And watch the up next video if you haven't seen it. It's the full Mamdani housing story where he announced $22 billion in new housing while his lawyers are in court blocking $10 billion in housing vouchers that he promised on the campaign trail. That story connects directly to the budget math that we just talked about. Let me know what you guys think about this. Drop it down in the comment section down below. Smash the like button if you kindly would. Share, subscribe, and as always, guys, I'll catch you on the next one.